Right, my name is Sida Linik. This is Marcus. Tonight we are joined again by Dolores Bahr and her husband, Dakota Bahr, and we are continuing this podcast that we started last week. You were listening to Fallen Hour Radio. Say Fallen Hour. Last week we did a thing on Dakota's ghost stories, and we kind of ended. We ended on a story that Dolores was trying to start, but we couldn't remember what it was.
You didn't look?
No. Well, that's where the video cut out. So I was like, I don't know. So we'll just go from the top. I don't know. We had a story though that we wanted you to tell. Remember?
Which one?
About the lady with the necklace.
Oh, it wasn't even a necklace. It was like a bandana
That she wore?
with feathers and bones on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I remember that.
So how did she come down this way anyways?
I cannot remember.
Because she was from New York.
Yeah.
And then I think Auntie met her when she used to work at the Merc.
She met her there,
Yeah.
and she said she was like in town or something, needed a place to stay.
Because remember they used to have like a homeless shelter in Crow.
Mm.
And then that's where she was staying at.
This was like well over, 15 years ago?
Way over that, dude.
About like 20 years ago or so?
Yeah, because I was only like 9.
Yeah.
How old are you?
29.
So it was 20 years ago.
On the dot.
No, but I just remember, I don't know, when she was hanging out around the house, it was kind of like she just kind of singled me out right away. And just the way she
Who
would...
brought her to the house?
I don't know.
I remember she was down here, and I think she showed up at the church or something, and she had nowhere to go. She was traveling through or something like that. I don't remember. But I remember Mom and them getting a bunch of stuff together for her, like body wash and all that stuff and clothes and things, and dropped it off with her. And that was like the start of it. We didn't see her. I just remember us going to this one place and dropping it off for her. And then sometime down the line, she got brought into the house.
Well, it's like not uncommon with Grandma's house because they literally would let people from all over the world stay there while they're in town. Like people from everywhere. So it was like not uncommon that there was somebody there that's from somewhere else. But this lady was a little different. Like,
She's scary. No, but I just remember walking into the living room and it was like you boys all in there with her and then Uncle Nate's boys all sitting around, and I think she was doing Jolly's hair.
yeah, she was. I think she was cornrolling his hair.
Yeah, and I remember I was playing outside and then I come in and she was asking about me. And I remember one of the boys was like, "Who, Dolores?" And like as soon as I walked in, I looked over and then she was like, "Shh, like telling him, be quiet." And it was just like after that, like 3 days later, because she was supposed to be leaving or something, and it was me, Grandma, and Mom standing in the kitchen, and she was telling me like she wanted me to have something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "I keep this with me at all times." And she took it off, and it was that bandana and had those bones on it and feathers hanging from it. And she said, "This thing holds a lot of power." She's like, "You have no idea how powerful this thing is." And Grandma and Mom were on the side, like telling me not to touch it. And then like she just wouldn't stop, like trying to hand it to me.
Yeah.
And I just grabbed it with like my fingertips. And then Mom and Grandma ended up yelling at her and telling her to leave the house.
Yeah.
Because she was trying to say that thing was like more powerful than God.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then Grandma, just remember she like went off and like screaming at her to get out. And then she ended up leaving. And then Mom and Grandma took that thing because Mom grabbed like a trash bag and grabbed it. And they went outside to pray. And then they were trying to burn it and it wouldn't burn.
Yeah, it's weird because, I mean, feathers will go up like that.
Mm-hmm.
And bandanas, they burn, obviously. Everything burns.
They said it took a long time and then it finally burned.
Started burning.
Mm-hmm.
That's so weird.
I remember that.
But I remember Grandma like sitting us all down and saying that people like that are going to be coming into all our lives trying to like
Yeah.
attack us basically, or like just target us. She said because the anointing's like on all of our lives and stuff, and coming from the life that we come from, like growing up in church and things. But I just remember, like, I don't know, it's still so stupid because you brought that up and I like blocked it out. And then when you brought it up, it just all came back and I was like, got that creepy feeling.
Dolores just like tunnel vision.
Vietnam flashback.
These sweaters are itchy, by the way. I'm like,
I mean, it's hot in here always. Right. And Dolores like, you got a sweater? Like Christmas sweater?
It was his
idea.
It's
going to be so unbearable.
It was Dakota's idea.
I know, but coming into contact with things like that are, I guess, deemed to be dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, some people buy things from, this is like a whole like horror movie theme, is buying things from secondhand stores, picking up some sort of, whether it's like an attachment or somebody that maybe been praying to somebody else that had that object, and then they put it in the store, and then it ends up in your house, and you end up kind of getting haunted, or you get sick, or things like that. It happens. I remember a minister praying over somebody on his name, Benny Hinn.
Yeah,
I was watching an old video of him, and he's praying for somebody, and this chick's been sick for a while, and he looks down at her. He's praying, and like mid-sentence he stops and he says, "What is that on her hand?" And it was a bracelet. And he asks her, "What do you know what these signs are?" And it's like a bunch of these like satanic symbols all over them. And she said no. And she said, "I just picked it up at a gift shop." And he said, "No, this was owned by a witch at one point."
Jesus.
And he said, "You got to be careful what you put on your body." And I was like, that's interesting too. As like even touching certain objects, or even when you're getting to like more spiritual things, you got to be careful who's praying for you too.
Yeah.
There's a big thing about touch, especially, I guess the thing about an object like that being haunted or being infested is
creating new words.
Infested. But it's like the way
I just got like David Spade in my head. Amazing.
It's the way, it's kind of like how anointing oil works for prayer.
Yeah.
Is what it does is when you put it on something or somebody, it's like a landing strip for the power to hit it. It's what that's how the old prophets did it. They use anointing oil for that, and it basically directs God's power to it. And when you have some other object that has whether it's symbols on it or things like that, that could be like a pull to that realm too.
Yeah.
Is she peeking over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that are scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like stuff like that happened all the time. I would talk to one of our cousins about that stuff all the time. And there's like a lot going on around here right now, and we even talk about that. That could be like witchcraft, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I remember one time, like a long time ago. You remember this story of when Grandpa somebody found a feather with some stuff tied to it in the yard, and there was a medicine man that didn't like him, and somebody found that in the yard. I can't remember who it was, but went and told Grandpa. He said, "Don't touch it at all." And he went out there, and what he did was he started praying as he.
What is that?
One of the cats.
they're fighting back there. He went and picked it up, and he was praying when he did it, and he crumpled it up in his hands.
Yeah.
And then he threw it up, and the wind literally took it away. And when he crumpled that up, there was a medicine man that lived near the house. And he heard a scream come from his house. His legs crumpled up, and the ambulance had to come and take him. And he was paralyzed for the rest of his life.
That story,
which wasn't very long after that happened. He ended up passing away.
Wow.
So it kind of like backfired on him.
Right.
Like trying to attack someone like him.
A minister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it's crazy. Like how you guys talking about like how I don't know, like how so many believe like in medicine, I put like bad medicine on people.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, I think it was probably my sophomore year. We're taking a trip to Idaho for like a summer camp, but it was with our JRTC, and it was ours and Lodge Grass's school. We caught a bus from Crow, and I remember when we got up there, they said that there'd be no cell service, everything like that, and we kind of like dropped into these mountains. We had to, they turn in your phones, everything. You won't be talking to like your parents for like a week and all this, you know. And it was a pretty nice place though, because every night they did like different activities. They had a swim pool there. They had like, they had a huge pond there. They had like a big rec center, basketball courts inside, outside. It was like a real nice place. But and they had like a go-kart track, mountain bike where you could go out, and just like every day you had something, all these different activities you could do. And then they gave you like this planner, like you had to do each one of those things before you could like leave.
Yeah.
But I remember we really liked it. But I remember the first or like second day, man, my brother, he wasn't going to school at Lame Deer, but some kids weren't going. And I remember when they're dropping me off, he just asked, his name's Rocco Cooper, and here he asked him, he's like, is it right if I go with you guys? And he's like, how old are you? He's like, are you older than 18? And he's like, no. He's like, go ahead, jump on the bus. Like, just, you know, don't mess up, nothing. He's like, I'm not going to be able to go. My son's like going for me. He's like, but just be good, enjoy the trip, you know?
Yeah.
So my brother went with us, and then Lodgegrass had a guy with him, a kid that would always, he was around my age then. He would travel with the team all the time, and I guess he'd like pray for them. I can't remember his name, but I always see him around to this day. But he'd pray for the team all the time, and I asked him, like, are you in JLTC? He's like, no. He's like, I just travel with the team everywhere they go. They always have me pray for them, and like, he's really into like peyote meetings and all that. He's like, I always pray for them everywhere we go. So that's what my thing is. That's why I get to go with them. I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. And you know, they put us in these cabins, and we were staying there. And here one day, man, my brother just got real sick, and here I was like checking on him, and I've never seen him so sick before. And I kept like looking at him and checking on him, and like something wasn't right. And he wouldn't eat breakfast, didn't eat like for a whole day. It was like probably like our third day there. He still wasn't eating at all. And I was like, just went back, and I remember he was like laying on that bunk bed. I remember like one day I was just like hanging out with him, and I like didn't want to leave his side.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, are you gonna be okay? I was like, should we like let him know? Like, might need to like, cause they have a landing strip there too, in case there's emergencies. And I was like, should we like let him know that he might need something? But they're like giving him some medicine and like giving him Tylenol because he's real fevered and stuff. And he's like, no, I'm gonna be okay, man. He's like, just go like enjoy yourself. Like, I don't want to ruin this, you know. He's like, I should be okay. And so finally I went and talked to that guy, and I was like, hey man, my brother's been like really sick, man. I was like, maybe you should like go pray for him. And he's like, what, really? Because like every morning they would pray too, and then they would like smoke, and they'd pass tobacco around, and they'd smoke outside, and they'd pray. And I was like, maybe you should pray for him. And he's like, all right, I will. And then he was praying with my brother, and I remember he's like, oh man, he's like, someone put something on him. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, we're in enemy territory right now. He's like, even it's enemy territory because it's Crow and Cheyennes, you know. And he's like, it's even enemy territory for you guys. He's like, obviously something here don't like you guys. And he's like, someone probably put something on him. And then I just remember he started praying with him, and he told me to open the window. And then as soon as he opened the window, he went up to my brother, and he started like sucking. He's like going like kept sucking by him, and he's praying with him. And then but he was like close to his head, like by his hairs, like by his crown, and he kept doing that. And then man, pretty soon I watched him go over to the window, and he's like, keep the window open. And I just watched him spit, man. And as soon as he started spitting, like this black stuff just come out of his mouth.
What the hell?
And you could see those bushes move. And like it was just me, him, and whoever was with him, like the guy that like I don't know if he carries his medicine or his stuff with him or for him or what. He told him to go stand by the front door and make sure no one comes in. But you could see like in those bushes move, and you can see there wasn't weeds because this place was like mowed pretty good everywhere around. But you could see it go by these trees, and whatever it was just moving everything. Then pretty soon it was like heading out, and before you know it, you could see on the side of this hill from the moonlight, it was like the crowds just happened to like open up like perfect timing, and you can just see this like huge dog creature running up the side of this hill. And like he said something in Crow, I don't know what he said, but he told me, he's like, look, there it is right there. And then he's like, it's a skinwalker. He's like, it was attacking your brother. And he's like, close the windows now. And he closed the windows, and like he put what was left of that tobacco over the door, and then he put some on the window. And he's like, all right, leave that there. He's like, make sure as soon as it's time to eat, he's like, you be the first one to feed your brother. He's like, he'll be good after that. So I was like, all right. Then it's like, as soon as I woke up in the morning, I went and grabbed him some food, gave it to him. And then like he don't remember any of that, but he said like he kept having like these crazy nightmares, and like he was just like sweating that whole time. But then like the next day he was like up, and he went and like did that zip line, and like he did everything. He went and did that mountain bike, and there's like nothing the guy when we stayed in Bernie, the guy that he stays across from us. He's always walking around like, just kind of doing whatever. Everyone knows him in town. His name's Waylon. I know him, my dad knows him, and when our dog went missing, I was like, hey, Waylon, man, keep an eye out for our dog. I was like, got out. If anyone's going to find him, he's going to find him, man. One morning he showed up. He's like, oh, I was just walking out on the river, He comes bringing him back, and he's all beat up. Like, look like he's been attacked, And I was like, had to fix him up. But he would always stop by our house real late, and sometimes he stopped by real early. But one day he stopped by and he was knocking, and sometimes we would see someone walking around with like a headlamp on, and it would be him, And I was like, oh, look, there's Waylon. And then, like, one time it's like, just because you see like orbs and stuff by the river, like stuff floating. One time I thought it was like one of those, and I was telling her, I was like, look, does that look like an orb? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like looking at it, and I was like, it's probably just Waylon, because there's certain trails that go through that little village. And here one day, sure enough, it was him, and he came walking over, and I was kind of telling him what we just now said. I was like, that we always think we see orbs and stuff, but it's him. He's like, oh yeah, it probably is. He's like, man, were you here last night? Were you home last night? And I was like, yeah, we were here. He's like, did you see that huge light flash? And I was like, no. He's like, man, I keep asking everyone. He's like, no one was outside last night. Like, no one's seen it. And I was like, what was it? And it kind of has something to do with, remember I was telling you guys about the car that we seen? Like, with the thing, like, waving,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He said that that's why, like, this car, man, is, like, a lot of people know of it and, like, see it and, like, have stories about it. And that's why I'm always, like, saying, like, I don't know if, like, these ghosts or spirits, if they can communicate and, like, hang out with each other, But anyway, he was showing me, and it was on like a little iPod. He was like, look at this video. He's like, I got it on video. And I was like, all right. And he's like showing me, and you could see his house. He was recording it from his trailer. But he said he went walking, and he said to watch out. He's like, watch out if you see something walking around with a light. He said, I don't know if I want to walk around with that on my head no more. He said, there's something else that walks around out here that has a light on its head. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, so watch out. Like, don't be walking up to it thinking it's me. Or like, he's like, just be careful. He's like, look at this. And he said that night he's seen that light walking. And I guess supposedly his sister just thought it was him. And he could see it coming from like these two older abandoned houses. And he said he could see that light coming. And he was just kind of watching it. He said it was coming closer to their house. And he said that it was someone. He said that they had clothes on and stuff. But there's like this light like hanging from the top of their head. He's like almost like how those fish are.
Yeah, those fish.
Yeah, like how those fish are. Like,
angler fish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said it was like walking like that, and he said that it just had its head down. It was just kind of like going. And he said he's like wondering what it was doing. And he thought it was gonna come up to the house, and he's like, man. And he said so. Then he said he busted out that little iPod, and like it's one of those like I don't know, it's a nano. Remember you have to like scroll through and like get to how you're gonna record. And and here he said that he got to it and he started recording. It was one of the first ones with cameras on it. He said he started recording, and then as he was recording, he said that this car comes pulling up, and it's an older car, and he said it just pulls up like perfect timing, comes pulling up, and he's like wondering like, man, who the hell is this? And they pull right up, and there's kind of like a little circle there where his house is, and there's a trailer that he stays in right there, and it's his mother's house. And he said that thing comes walking right up, and just then he said that car like pulls up and stops, and he said that thing walks up to the door and opens it and like looks in. And then you could see it, and as he showed me, and he shows me this video, because at first I wasn't like, I was kind of thinking like he's tripping out, but I was like, yeah, and he's like, man, I'm gonna show you, like he's getting to it. He's like, well, watch this, and then you can see that thing come walking up. In the video, you can't see anything walking, but you can see a light, and then you can see this. You can't see a car, but it's almost like you can see like the dirt while it's pulling up. That's all you can see, but after a second, you can see the outlining of a car. And then that's it, and you just see a real huge flash. But when he was saying it, he said he's seen that car pull up, and just then that thing come walking up. He said it opens the door, and like it like looks in, and like gives that person like a head nod or something. And he said it gets in, and he said it shuts the door, and he said that whole car just lights up, and he said it's like lights up the whole planes too, like everywhere lit up. And then you could see that flash on that little iPod, and then it's like it just goes kind of like staticky or something. You can't really see anything after that. Then it kind of like gets his picture quality back. But he said he was recording like this, and he said he's seen all of that happen, and he said that it was just gone. So he said he ran out there to go look to see, like just look around, and he said there's nothing there. And I guess he must have ran and knocked, and his sister thought it was him walking, but she didn't hear nothing, or she didn't see that like flash. So he said after that, like it was getting to him, so he started walking around, and he went and asked everyone around the whole neighborhood if they seen a huge
flash of light.
Yeah, flash of light. And he said that he went to ask this old guy because he's outside smoking cigarettes all the time. And he said no, he didn't see anything. He always sits on his back porch. So he said he went around, asked everyone there, and then he said it was already pretty late, so he just went back home. And then the next day, that's when he went back around asking everyone again. So he came and knocked on our door, and he's like asking if we had cameras or anything. And I told him no, and he's like, yeah. He's like, man, I got it recorded, and he showed me that video. And I remember telling her about it later on when I came in. But it was like a few weeks later, I was like, man, let's check out that video. I took my dad over there to go show him, and he said that iPod was gone. He said he don't know what happened to it. It just up and disappeared from his trailer. Someone stole it.
Weird.
And then so like I always thought of that with like how my cousin was telling me about that same car, like seeing that thing in there, like waving at her. Then my uncle telling me about like
that thing with the long face. You're
yeah,
saying? Or like
yeah. And then like my cousin telling me, or my uncle telling me about that time he jumped in that car. So I just like was telling him, I was like, man, it seems like that car has a lot to do with different things that happen around there, you know. And when I was talking to my cousin about it, I was like, I wonder if like they can all communicate with each other, or if they can meet up or like travel together. And she's like, that's what I was thinking ever since that happened to me. Like when I seen it, she's like, I've been thinking that way ever since. She's like, so she's like, that's why I don't like leaving at night no more. That's why I don't go on the road. I don't go on the creek at night.
Like they're all just cruising around together.
Yeah.
Just hanging out.
So like, did he say that was like part of his head or like something that he was wearing?
He's so like what
like the thing off his head, like the light.
Yeah, the only way he told me, all I could see was the light in that little video, you know. But he's telling me it reminded him like the fish. Like that's all I could think of. He's like, you know, like those fish. He's like the bottom of the ocean. He's like how they have an antenna and the lights there. I was like, yeah. He's like, that's exactly what it looked like. And he said that it was like just like strolling a certain way. And he said he already knew something was different about it, you know. And he said his sister seen it from a distance and just thought it was him. And I told him that everyone kind of knows that's him walking around because he always has that on his head when he walks around. And he's like, yeah, just be careful, man. It might be something else, you know.
Just go ask like a really, really old native guy that lives there. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's Ankler Man. Like a crazy name for something.
That's weird. That is kind of fun. That is kind of something to think about, though. It's like, how does a spirit,
like if they interact with another spirit?
Yeah, like what if they were taken to that place from somebody else? Like what if they were an attachment? They were brought to a new place with different spirits. Like how does that work? You know?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Hey, you got me, man.
I know you got me.
It's like where the high school is too. They said that there's an old like warrior trail supposedly that goes through like the gym or like right through the school. And one of my uncles worked there. He was just a custodian then. He worked his way up, but he didn't care for cleaning at night anymore. But he was telling us that one night he figured that's probably what it was. He said he was in the gym and he said that he kind of heard like a horse trotting. And he said he was just like sweeping and he said kind of kind of looked. And he said he looked behind him and he said there was this guy, like a warrior, walking. And he said that there was a horse walking behind him. He wasn't riding it or anything. Someone else told me before that, like, yeah, there's a story of like a guy riding through on a horse, but he told me that it was him that seen it. And he said that he was walking. He said that he like looked all like exhausted too. And he was like walking and he's leading his horse. And he said when he looked at him, he said he kind of like jumped back. And he said then the same time, he's like that spirit like looked at him and did the same thing, like the same reaction, like got scared of him. And he said he like turned around and ran back the way he came from, like, and he was going with his horse too. And then I remember seeing like videos of saying like when like a ghost sees you and it's like looking around the corner, or like it's probably just as scared as you are,
like
or
it's watching you.
Yeah, like it's watching you, or like it thinks you're the ghost. You know what I mean? So like I always think of stuff like that too when I see something, like that's why I try not to react if I do see something, you know, like because I'm thinking it's probably wondering who I am or what I'm doing.
Just waving at it.
Yeah.
Like the others.
It's okay.
Ew.
I always get that.
I love that movie,
others.
and I wanted to watch it again, but I can't find it. But I don't want to go back and watch it again and like have like it wasn't that great. You know what I mean?
This was a lot better when I was little.
Me and Alethea watched I almost said the others. The hell is it? The movie, The Fourth Kind.
Oh yeah,
I talked about that before, I think, but hyped it up. Like this movie's scary as hell. You gotta watch it. We watched it, and it's like Alethea's like, yeah, it's all right. And I was like, you're right. It was just all right. It's like not.
He rolls over in bed, just scared, traumatized.
I think just some of the ideas that were coming out of that movie.
The ending is what like creeped me the hell out.
Yeah, the ideas of that.
That is the part that's like
out.
freaking creepy in that movie.
Yeah,
is the end when she like starts going up in the air and she starts like whatever it is starts talking through her.
Right.
And saying like there's like no God or something like that.
Yeah.
Or God has abandoned us or something.
Or he is God or something.
Or yeah,
like that.
something like I
God,
can't remember what the hell it is. It's been forever. But that part is what freaked me out. And it like contorted her body.
Yeah.
And then they show her and she's in the wheelchair. Yeah, seeing that I was like, whoa. That's creepy. That's the only part of that movie that creeps me the hell out. Is that part.
What other movie was I trying to watch? Anyways, there's a movie that Aaron also told us to watch. And that one just weird looking. It's static shots of this house, and there's like, I don't know if there's like furniture in there or not, but it's just like, that's the whole trailer, just shots of these hallways, the living room, a door that's open, and it's just like a voice in the back going, this house, something like that.
Are you sure it's not just someone trying to sell a house?
No, it's a movie. I was like, oh, it's kind of funny. I want to watch that one.
It's not a realtor commercial.
This house.
You want this house.
I don't know. We've always kind of teetered on that thought of spirits interacting or residuals, things like that.
Yeah.
We've talked about that many times, like different realities bleeding into each other.
Like different dimensions.
Right. And demons and how they work. But it's like, how does that work though? How are they portraying someone from a different era if that's like the route we're going?
Basically, like what you're saying is like timelines colliding.
Right.
Yeah.
Like everything happening all at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you take away just time itself, like if time didn't exist,
Yeah.
it's just these things just colliding.
Right. Yeah. And that's something we talked about too. But I just seen this video of this study this guy did, and I have to find the video. It's probably like a flat Earth thing, but it seemed interesting to watch. Their ideas kind of seemed interesting. If it is true, if it's a real study, I don't know. But so this guy has like this wall, and it's got this one slit in it, and he passes light through it. So he's able to track these particles through it, and they behave like particles or light. And then he gets two lights, and it's able to cross both and still hit the wall. There's another wall behind it. But there was one point to where, I think this is how it goes. Anyways, the light just passes through one slit.
Yeah.
And he thinks because they were observing it, the particles were acting differently. Like the particles were aware that they're being watched.
So did he record it and not watch?
I don't know. It's like that's
close your eyes. Close your eyes while you do this.
That's like the
Okay, Mayan statue.
I know.
that's like the whole theory of simulation.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Like we're in a simulation. So like if you observing something, does it act differently? And this is what always messed me up as a kid too, because like we always do this crap.
Does that like have to do with like the whole if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound?
Right. Yeah.
I hate
it's like,
that question. I'm like, yeah, it fucking does.
And who hears it?
right?
Start racking your brain.
But if it's according to that study, then it probably doesn't. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, does it?
How exactly is a rainbow made?
Why are blues good?
Why is the sky blue?
Oh, Alethea just showed me this video too of these. You guys probably saw it. Those chickens freezing.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
but the thing was
due to temperature, or either they feel threatened.
Right, but the birds in the background stopped too. Did you notice that?
No.
Because I was watching it, and she was showing me, and this lady's freaking out about these birds freezing, and then they just animate again. But the birds also in the background start animating. You hear them more.
You mean they freeze in their steps?
Yeah,
or even in the sky.
The chickens freeze in their steps, but in the video you can't really hear birds in the background. I don't think you hear them at all. And then once the chickens animate again, you can hear the birds in the back.
Oh, that's weird.
Man, you know, one that
They all like froze for a second.
One that always gets us gets me a lot is when we go to Billings. We take the old like Pryor Road a lot too.
Yeah.
But the airplanes, when they're gonna go land.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it looks like they freeze.
Yeah, and they'll be there for like so long.
Oh, you guys see that crap? I haven't seen that
I
yet.
saw that on the way back from Billings.
I have a video somewhere on my phone.
It looks so weird. You sent that to me.
I'm constantly like watching them because like all the trips we take to Billings to like pick up materials and stuff for these jobs, but we always take the old road, and then like a few times I've taken her. But man, anytime we go, like even on the interstate, I'm always like watching those damn planes, and waiting for it to happen. You know,
They say
it looks crazy. It does.
They say
It's
it's an actual phenomena. Pilots talk about this is where the plane just pauses because of the way the propulsion of the plane matches the wind speed, and then it's able to sit in there.
Just sit there.
Yeah.
Like
Something
I remember
like that.
seeing that
Yeah.
like on the way back from Billings once. I was like, that looks fucking crazy. And I
And the
remember
way-
seeing a video where
But if a freaking broomstick's in the sky, like what is that, right?
What the hell
I've
are
seen
you
that.
talking
Oh,
about?
that video?
Yeah.
You never seen that?
I probably have.
And there's one where this girl catches this leaf like mid fall and it's just stuck, and she's recording that. Like, how do you explain those?
I don't know. This day and age, it's hard to tell. But I remember seeing one where you made me forget what I was gonna say. Oh, that plane. It was like climbing. Like it went up and it stopped, and everybody started pulling out their phones, filming it because it looked like it was just sitting there like this.
What do you think the
Like,
guy's doing in
facing
there?
up. The guy just looking around like, what the hell's going on?
How do we get out of this?
His engine just stops.
I noticed when we're like,
Opens the window. Help!
I broke physics.
Do you think I can crawl out?
we went hunting and around the mountains, and like I was watching, like when we were there, I was watching the planes too. Then they're a lot higher up than because they're they're landing and stuff or they're taking off. But I was watching them too, and I was trying to explain that to him, but he's like not about that. Like he don't want to know any more about that, or like
Yeah.
some people don't want to know any more about that. Or they just like don't want to believe it. So I was there watching them. I was like, man, I wonder why it happens. I was trying to ask his opinion.
He's probably an NPC.
Ew.
He didn't want to like have
Just
any
keep
thought
saying
on
the
it.
same sentences
I
over and
know.
over.
Oh my god.
But I remember seeing him like when we're high up in the mountains. Like,
Oh my god. No, it's kidding.
we're kind of like it seemed like we're kind of more like higher up above, kind of like the same level as them.
Yeah.
And I was waiting to see if like the same thing would happen. So I was wondering if it only happens when they're above you. You know, like when they're above you, it's probably how you see it.
Yeah. But I remember seeing one that this one kind of like weirded me out. It was a bird. It looked like it just stopped flying and its like wings were out and it just sat there.
Yeah, it's
like in the air.
its propellers were matching. No, it's kidding.
Right? Stupid.
Somebody said something about it like that thing probably stepped on like the wrong wire and like died and it just
Isn't
it was
that,
dead.
That's
Like,
what
it's
happened though?
sat there. I
It
don't
was stuck
know.
on a wire, they said, but you can't even see it.
Like it just fried itself and just
Yeah.
All I picture is that guy that Alethea always references. You gotta be faster than that.
Oh, like,
I got quicker. It always
quicker than that.
People like that though, kind of they don't frustrate me, but it's kind of amusing that
What, the ones that don't want to know?
right. It's like you meet those people. Like Juno is one of those people.
Yeah,
Oh,
He
yeah.
gets-
brother.
he gets creeped out so easy.
Right? Yeah. If this one time he came to our house, and
We're-
something happened.
doing the spirit box.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
That's
Wouldn't
when we
be around
had.
that.
That's when we had that Chucky on it, and it started
Yeah.
slowing down. And I was like, it doesn't do that. And he started like nervously laughing, and then he's like, "Well, I better go." And then
About time to hit the old dusty trail.
and he ended up leaving.
There was something else too. It was just me, him, and Alethea, and we heard something I think in the kitchen, and then he just left.
He even came and checked on your place when you guys were gone.
Oh, right.
And he said the like Marilyn Manson was playing in his house.
Yeah,
when
and
he walked
we did
which happened a lot.
because we had cameras in our house at the time, and
Yeah.
we were in Colorado, I think.
Yeah.
And
You're at the Stanley. I think.
Yeah.
You're at the Stanley.
and he checked his. He was like, "Did you? What the hell did he say? Something like leaving your music playing?" I was like, "No." And I checked the cameras, and he's walking around in here, and yeah, the computer just starts playing Marilyn Manson, like
Scary.
blaring.
Playing your
What
dad's
weirded-
music.
Yeah,
What weirded me out is they'd always do that to Al's PlayStation upstairs.
yeah.
Like he would literally, it's a whole process just to get to YouTube on
Right.
a PlayStation.
His would be Marilyn Manson too.
It would literally kick the TV on, turn the PS4 on, go to YouTube, go to Marilyn Manson, and play the music.
Scary.
Like that's a big process, and then you just hear Marilyn Manson start blaring upstairs.
Yeah.
And that happened here how many times down here?
Yeah, a lot.
And it's always Marilyn
It
Manson.
happened when Alethea was cutting my hair.
Yeah.
I had the computer sitting over here somewhere, I think, and we're just sitting there, and then it just started playing. It's the beautiful people.
Yeah, didn't that happen at like 3 a.m. once too when you were sleeping?
Yeah. I don't know what the hell it was.
So what you're saying is don't listen to Marilyn Manson. I'm just kidding.
I love Marilyn Manson.
Because it's your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those people kind of, I don't know, it's hard to...
That don't want to know, like if oh my God, this happened, and it's like something that'll creep them out. They don't want to hear it.
Right.
Like that kind of thing.
So picture that as like a whole, like across the country. Like how many people are like that who don't want to, I guess, open their mind to that, to certain things?
I mean, I just told you a story about me and a coworker, and we heard that person screaming, like it sounded like it was coming from upstairs, and there's nobody in there. Everybody was in the front office or outside.
Come on.
His mic's like really close.
It's supposed to be.
Not that close.
Yeah. What close? Like close to his face?
Like this? Like this?
It's supposed to be like right here.
Mine's like way down here.
I don't know.
Just talk louder.
I know.
Gets a winded over there.
But he kind of like reacted that way. I mean, he would tell me stories all the time too. He would tell me like ghost stories or things that happened to his brother, all these creepy stories. And then when that happened, he wanted to change the subject so fast. So, I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, he started trying to talk about something else.
Yeah.
And like change the subject. I was like, dude, you did not just hear that. Like we're literally standing there right after it happened. And he kept, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, it's probably nothing. Nothing. That thing was fucking loud, dude. And
yeah.
Like it was screaming inside this building, and we were just standing there listening to it.
Aaron is like that to an extent to where he just doesn't like it.
I know.
He's open-minded, but when something happens, he just gets creeped out, and he won't, he's like out of it.
Yeah,
out.
He said like it started happening at his house. Yeah.
God.
And yeah, he said the stuff started happening at his house now, and he's just
he blamed us for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, whatever, blames you guys. It's just him.
Man, I was telling Doris about this house in Lame Deer too, like, and that house has always been creepy. I mean, I know my auntie would drop her off there a few times, and she always told me like, man, this house is like real haunted, and she didn't really tell me much stories, but she would never stay the night there. She used to stay the night with that girl before, but ever since they lived there, she didn't want to stay the night. She'd always have my grandma go pick her up, and it's like once you're heading out up Soldier Gulch, remember that red house I was showing you, like off the left there? It's abandoned now. I think someone tried burning it down, but I've always known certain people to stay there. But when I was in high school, this girl got it. She's pretty young. It was her family's, and she decided to stay there, and they gave it to her. But man, they'd always be having parties there, like every weekend. That was like the place to go because it was their own land. It was out of town, But every time, like something crazy, like spooky would happen too. And then, man, I remember like seeing that girl in there. They said like she was like, I don't know, like speaking in tongues and like just doing this crazy stuff in the hallway, and like people were like talking about it like it was normal, like, oh yeah, this happened last week, man. Like, go check it out. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like,
go check it out.
She was like standing on top of the window, like saying she was gonna jump out, and like some people, these girls are telling her, no, don't do it. And there's like some idiots like, jump out the window, like,
oh
what are you waiting for?
Do a flip.
Yeah,
some jackass in the background.
Did it happen to the same person twice?
Yeah, it happened to her. She was the person that owned the house at the time, and it was like something was always attacking her. And then even one of my cousins like, man, every time like around the same time this happens to her, like she just gets blanked out, like can't handle, and like, but here we're talking one day and she's like, I don't know, I think something's like she got possessed or something's bothering her. But I remember my buddy, man, he like came to out in the hills, and then he's like, yeah, man, he's like, I came to out in the hills, and I was like, man, where were you? We didn't want to leave. It was like almost like sunrise then. And we finally found him. He come walking off this hill. And I was like, man, where were you? We're looking for you for a long time. And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, man, there's some chick like took me out in the hill. So we went and walked out there. And then no one knows who she was, like who that girl was. Or I was like, who was it? And he's like, man, I barely remember. He's like, she just gave me a drink. And like we headed out. And I was like, I was kind of like tripped out by that. I was like, man, I was like, gotta be careful. I was like, this place is pretty spooky. He's like, yeah, I know. He's like, they're telling me some stories. And then like another night, this other girl just come crawling out of the creek. She just showed up, and like that like real stink mud. It's like black, and it like smells
like slough.
Yeah, it smells horrible. we were leaving, and she come walking down the road, and she was like, man, she just looked crazy too, because all that's on her, and she's like crying, and her hair's all over her face. But man, it looked so freaky, because just the way she looked, and like all those girls, my cousins, they like started screaming, and we're like freaking out too, because like off of their energy, you know. And we're like, man, what the hell do we do? They're like, oh man, like they're like, it's her. She is like, because it's their friend. Like,
she was probably coming for help.
Yeah, they're like,
they start screaming.
Everyone's
She probably
running
just
away.
like slipped and ate shit and fell on the freaking.
Oh my God, run!
yeah, everyone like stopped, and like they started panicking, because she's like, they thought someone did something to her, but she just like wandered off. But before I know it, became a thing where someone would always wander off at that house, and like they would all
Then
say
something would happen.
Yeah, they'd all say like, oh well, I left with this person, like I thought I left with this person. And after a while, someone was like, man, let's just not go out to that house anymore. And finally, someone must have told that girl, like, man, you need to like move out of that house. That house is like haunted. Like anyone that lives out there, something bad happens to them. Things happen on that house. And now, like, her life's completely turned around. Like, she's a social services worker, and like, but compared to back then, I was like, man, I was like, she's doing real good now, you know. But then I just remember like so much things happening at that house, and anytime I drive by that house, like just the other day when I went to Lame Deer, we ended up driving by it, but like I just like look at it, and I always like feel like something's like looking out the window at me or something. And I told my dad about these stories. He's like, oh yeah, man. He's like, I could have told you that, man. He's like, I told you to stay away from that house. And he told me a time when they were having a bonfire on top of that hill where that house is, and one of his buddies walked away. He's like, he said he's gonna go take a piss, and he said, man, he was like back instantly, and he came walking back, and they said like they passed that bottle around, and he took a shot, and they said he walked off, and they said as soon as he walked away, and you could see him outside of the bonfire, like the light, you could see him come walking back. And he's like, all right, what were you guys laughing around about? He's like, what did I miss? And they're like, what do you mean?
What
you were just here.
Like a doppelganger type thing?
Like you were just here. And he's like, no, man. He's like, I was over there. He's like, I was taking a piss. He's like, I could hear you guys all laughing over here.
That's weird.
That is
like,
creepy.
They're like, you just left. And I guess like this one girl just started screaming because she's like knew something was up. And then they said they jumped in their vehicles and like headed out. And my dad said all of them started panicking and they left. And like my dad said for the longest time, everyone was scared. They like quit hanging out with that guy. Everyone was like scared of him after that. But he's like, guys, like that house is like the way things happen there all the time.
The way you describe that does like sound like everything that would have like an infestation, like a demonic infestation to a house. Like you're describing this girl.
Yeah.
Like how it was bringing her down in every possible way. Mm-hmm. But the second she's out of there, she's totally different. Totally different person. Her life's turned around. All of that. That place probably is really like infested.
Yeah, I think someone tried to burn it down. I think that's exactly why, because the house is still standing, but it's all like black on the inside, and they had to put it out. It didn't burn down, and what trips me out is most houses like get lit up like that, and they burn down a lot faster. But that one managed to still like stand, you know.
You're gonna say you're all. She was like,
raise my hand. No,
she just froze.
Yes, Dolores.
that reminds me of the house across the street from Mom's.
Oh,
because anyone who would move in there, there'd always be like a bunch of cops there all the time, or like they'd be fighting, or like it's like those people that would live there, their lives would go downhill fast.
Right.
Yeah. And then the last people that stayed there, oh my God,
that was bad.
Because they were fine for like the first like 3 months, and then next thing you know, they're like all doing drugs there, drinking constantly, like outside, and like I remember even they like shot a gun off outside, and like we all woke up and like freaked out. And had to call the cops too.
There was even a death there.
Yeah, and then I was like, I wonder if like something's up with that house. But I remember Mom telling me that someone got like murdered there.
There was like this screaming guy at night, and then they found her. Yeah,
it was like her own grandson.
But with the neighbors, like that was saying that day, that guy was hitting his head against the gate, and that's kind of one thing. I was tripping out on that, and I was like, she told me all the stories about how even before they moved in there, how something would probably happen to them. But I talking to the guy one day, I was just like, man, you guys should just like chill out, you know, like things like everyone's asking, because that's when I was working at Town Pump, and people were like, man, what happened down the road that day? Everyone heard the gunshot, you know. But after they lost the house, like we started seeing them move out, and they left and everything. I ran into the guy at the bar one day, and I was like, man, I told him the story that Dolores said, and I was like, how much was like owed on that house? Because like at first I was thinking like, man, well we can probably try to buy it, and like your uncle can pay for it, you know, just have people come pay for it. And then I talked to him about it. I was like, "What's up with the house? How much you guys owe?" You know, this is that. He's like kind of telling me, and he's like, "Man, I wouldn't do it if I was you." He's like, "I wouldn't do it," and I was like, "What? Why?" And then he told me that he's like, he found a book inside that house. He's like, "Something's wrong with that house." He's like, I was like what? Like it carries something, you know? And like once I said that, like even his like lady like looked at me like I knew something that they probably didn't. I didn't tell him I knew much about it. I just told him what she told me, that things happen there, you know. And he said that he was his son was kicking the wall one day or doing something, freaking out in the house or whatever. But he said that the drywall got kicked in, and he said they could see something on the bottom, and he said that they tore it out, and he said it was a book, and he said that it was some type of like satanic book. And he said they opened it up, and I guess they were like all checking it out, and he said more people started showing up there, and he said some people that they've never even like really hung around or they wouldn't have, but he said just because the lifestyle they're living, he said they were checking it out and they kind of got into looking at it and reading it more, and they thought it was pretty crazy. And he said his son really kind of got into it, and finally one day like a huge argument happened, this fight, they decided to get rid of it, and some guy showed up and said that he wanted it, someone they knew said he'll take the book. He's like, "Oh, I'll take it off your guys' hands." He's like, "Yeah, man, take it, like get rid of it, whatever." And they kind of went to straighten their lives out and everything, and they said the guy took it, and they never seen him for a while. But he said one night there was a party there, and they were just kind of hanging out. And he said out of nowhere, he said he just seen that book getting passed around again. And he said the guy didn't even show up. The guy wasn't anywhere around. But he said that book was right off. They recognized it. And like people that were there, were like, "Man, where'd that come from? And who brought this?" And he said that it caused a huge fight again. Who brought this book? And he said he's cussing people out, and no one knew how it showed back up.
It just showed up.
It just showed back up, and someone seen it on the table and start reading it and looking at it. Thought it was pretty creepy, and like hand it to the next guy. Before you know it, made it in to the living room, and they're reading it again, and he's seen it. And he said that house, he said that ever since they have lived in there, that like a lot of bad things happened to their family. He's like, so if I was you, he's like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even try to move into that house.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Dad had a story like that.
He said that they found a Ouija board in that wall too.
Yeah.
That's what Dad said that they found in one house, and he said that they somebody messed with it.
It was down in Crow.
Yeah, and he said they tried to throw it away, so they threw it away, and it would end up back in that house. He said it kept ending up back in that house. They go throw it away until he said they broke it up, and he said they burned it. They said they tried to burn it. I can't remember what he said happened when he burned it, but they went home, and literally after they just burned it in this barrel. And they went home. The second they walked in the door, they said it was on the wall. That Ouija board was on the wall. And yeah, they had to have somebody come and take care of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he kind of had the same thing happen.
That's nuts. I didn't know about that house, but it is strange. And I know that house was on foreclosure.
Yeah.
Like before other new people started moving in for like 24,000, something like that. I know that somebody paid it off, like a grandmother paid it off or something before. That was probably one of the recent owners, and then it just probably went right back into foreclosure. But yeah, that house always had cops at it, raids and things. Yeah, and it's just like the quietest street in the world too.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy because that book, like I don't know what it is, or like I've never seen one, you know. But I was remember my dad chasing someone off from we stayed in this apartment in Sweet Medicine, and he chased this guy off one time, and man, it was. His life like just went downhill though too, because you notice a lot of people that do deal with stuff like that or like mess with stuff like that, like the worst happens to them usually. But he ended up like getting his legs. I remember last time I seen him, he was in a wheelchair. He had no legs, and I didn't even bother to ask him what happened. But I was always kind of like in fear of him. Wasn't scared of him, like he wasn't like a muscular guy, you know, intimidating. But just because of that, we used to carry this book around all the time, and he'd wear like a leather jacket, always had on a bandana, and like. Tied back, had kind of longer hair. But I just remember my dad chasing him off one time, and he's like telling us, like, man, you boys stay away from that guy. Like, if he ever tries to have you guys read that book, he's like, he's a devil worshiper. And I was like, he's a what? He's like, I'm like wondering what he's talking about. He's like, don't worry about it. Like, because anytime I try to like figure things out, or ask
questions.
Yeah, he's just like, don't worry about it, man. Just like stay away from him. Like, otherwise, you're gonna be in trouble. So like, man, like anytime I seen him, I'm always like, oh man, like tell my boys that guy's devil worshiper. Like, watch out for him. And they're like, what? So everyone was kind of scared of him. Then I think he kind of like he liked that feeling, like walking out like that, and like like move away from the road. And he's like, come walking up. But now I think about it, he's always walking everywhere all the time. But I noticed his life like really got bad, and like I said, I don't think he's not alive anymore. But he had no legs. Like last time I seen him, he was in a wheelchair, and I noticed he quit carrying around that book. And I told one of my friends about this story, and they said, yeah, that he always had that book, and his family would always get mad at him about like reading it and trying to show other people it, and like he said like that's how he got his power and stuff like that. But like all he did was like sold drugs, you know. And I just noticed like how bad it affected him. So I know people have those books, and anyone could probably get one if they wanted it. But I just know like the outcome's like really horrible.
Like when when you said Ouija board, like it triggered a bunch of memories because this has nothing to do with that. But I remember this once. I don't know if I told this before, that we went to a friend's house and we're outside, and somebody brought over a Ouija board. And they're like, oh, I brought it over. And I didn't even know what the hell it was. I've never seen one before, never even heard of one. And I was just just young. And he was like, oh yeah, it's like, it's this game. And they wanted to, try it out. And what they did was they laid literally on the lawn, and they were all underneath a blanket. And I remember there was a couple of them. We'll say that like there was 4 or 5 of them underneath there. Mm-hmm. And they were all under there, and they had a lighter, while they're underneath there. And I remember me and 2 other people were outside of the blankets again. Like they just didn't feel right what they were doing. And I remember one of them screamed. It's like, what the hell? We looked over, and one of them screamed, and they all, like jumped out of that blanket. There was another person under that blanket with them.
Ew.
And you could see the blanket like in the shape of a person, and it just dropped like that.
Wow.
And the dude that brought the Ouija board ran home screaming. Like he left it there. He ran home screaming. Everybody scattered. Everybody took off. And this is something that happened a lot, but Grandma, she like, it was crazy because she would like know when something would happen. Mm. Like if you saw something, she would already know. Like she'd come over and ask, what did you see? Or what happened? Something like that. And I remember we like freaking hoofing it all the way up to the house. And we were at the bottom of the hill and running all the way up to the house. And right when I got up there, it was me and I can't remember who else was with me. I think Juno and Jolly were with us. And we ran in the house, and she was like, what were you boys doing? Like she knew. And like we just tried to run in and like not say anything. And she already knew. She was like waiting. Because like right when it happened, I remember it, like the wind started blowing, and it just kind of got dark like quick. And I remember, she freaking knew, man. Right, we ran the door, and she was like, "What were you guys doing?" And I was like, "Nothing. We weren't doing anything." She was like, "You're lying." And I said, "Nothing." And she was like, "What was going on? Where you were at?" I said, "Oh, some kid." I didn't even know what it was called. I was like, "Some kid brought a Luigi board." And I remember she beat the hell out of us. Just you stay away from that stuff and blah blah blah. Going off and she like, man, she was pissed. But yeah, it was like one thing is she always knew when something would happen. She would like come over to the house, or you run into her. Or she would ask like automatically, what were you doing, or what was going on, or what did you see? You didn't even have to say a word. She already knew. But yeah, that just kind of triggered a memory when you brought up a Ouija board.
I remember Gloria was saying that her brother was playing one with his friends, and then she was telling me too not to ever play one. I didn't know what it was either because we were like just young then. And then she said that he ended up like 2 days after that, he ended up breaking his leg.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, scary."
I was watching videos on Ouija boards, and there's always this pattern with some of them, as where they just break out laughing, like uncontrollably,
like maniacally.
Yeah, and they just like fall back. They just keep laughing. People record it, and they say it happens all the time. There's this one group of people that I was looking into, and I wanted to cover that a while ago. I remember that.
Yeah, we kind of brought that up.
Yeah, and I was like, wonder what that is. Like, why does that happen?
And it's crazy that you say that, because one of my buddies, he found one. He moved over to the subdivision, and here in the crawl space. I don't know. He said that. I noticed his life too has like been different ever since he found that too. But I can't remember the girl's name. He always says that like she's the one that put it down there. He like knows the name. Everyone in his family is like, oh man, this guy because he always brings it up, and he would get really weird sometimes. He kind of like talk to himself, and for a while, some of us kind of thought like he was just doing it to kind of put on more of a like a show, you know, to like play the part more. But I remember he was telling me he found that Ouija board down there one day. He's like, "Do you want me to go get it?" And me, man, I was like death scared of that shit, you know. Like, "No, man, keep that down there," you know. And he's like, "Should I go grab it? Should I show you?" Like, I didn't even want to look at it. Like, I never even seen one before. Like, I've seen them on movies, but then even like at that, I'm like, "Hey, like, cooking, don't want to see it. Like, watch it." Happen, you know?
He covers his eyes.
Yeah. So he's like telling me he had one in his house, and like even that made me feel uncomfortable. And I was like asking his cousin, he's like, "Yeah, man, he's a weirdo, man." Like, he's like, "I'm telling you, like, just hang out with me," because they'd always like pretty much fight for who gets to hang out with him. Like, they always want me to go stay at his house, and he was telling me that Ouija board was down there, and he told me he used it. Like, something told him to use it, and he brought it out one day. He said he used it down there at first, and here it's right underneath, like a light. You know how crawl spaces will have a light bulb down there? You just pull that switch. He said it was right there. He said it just turned on, and he's seen it. So he started asking it questions. He said it started working itself before he had to do anything, you know,
like the planchette started just moving.
Yeah, so he said he used it, and then he told me he's used it a few other times, but ever since then I just noticed like crazy things have happened to him. And like how you're saying about like they just laugh like out of normally, I'd always see him do that, and like we wouldn't even know, like there wouldn't even be anything funny going on, you know what I mean? He'd just be like sitting over there laughing, and we're like, "Man, what the heck was with this guy?" And I remember asking my sister, like, "This guy like take pills now or something?" Like, what's up with him? And they're like, "I don't know, man. He's just being a weirdo." And then, but sometimes when he would see something funny, he would laugh, but then it wouldn't be that funny, you know. Like after that, everyone would, if it was something funny, then everyone would kind of get quiet because he's like getting carried away with it. But just him saying that kind of reminds me of times he would do that, and I don't know if he'd just go into like deep thought and be thinking about something, and he'd just be like staring off, you know, and like just start laughing. I'm like, "What was it? You know, what did you think of?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And then like sometimes he would tell me, and then I'm not sure if like he just like made something up real quick to just like clear the water, you know.
Now you know how I feel when you're sitting there weirding out, going through a conversation in your head, and his lip will be moving, and then he'll start laughing. I'm like,
what's he on pills now?
Weird.
That's probably like internal monologue.
His friend was telling me about it too. I probably have the messages, but he said that there was one demon that he would always talk to, and it's like a well-known one with Ouija boards.
Zozo?
Yep.
Wow.
And he's like, he's like, "Don't even say that name out loud." He's like, all going off. I know. And then he's like, because when he would tell me about it in person, he'd just say Z-O-Z-O, and I already know. And I was like, "Oh my god."
Wow. I heard that was like another name for the devil or something.
And him, because like his whole family are like live on like a ranch and stuff. They're all like that type of family. And he's like the black sheep, like had like long hair, kind of like how we all were when we were growing up.
So like imagine him like living on a ranch.
Yeah.
I can't see it.
Piercings, dark clothes, all that. And like that's how he is. He like totally stands out.
Okay.
It's not bad to stand out.
Okay, yeah, but when he's playing with a Ouija board, just
I remember going to Canada and going to this house, and we were with this group, and they're going there to minister to pray over a house because this kid was having some trouble. A nice house, went downstairs, and the mom waited like a good half hour, I remember, and she told us that her son was playing with the Ouija board downstairs. And the funny thing was is we were walking around the house, and we all kind of stopped under this staircase, and that's where he would play with it. And I remember they started to pray, and for some reason my fingers and I started to react like I was like there's something inside of me. You know what I mean? And I remember looking at the minister, and because my fingers were like doing this like weird thing where they're just going backwards
by themselves.
Yeah, and like it was like tingly. My lips got tingly.
You're floating. Just
and I remember looking at him, and he just kind of nods his head and comes towards me, starts praying for me. And while he starts praying for me, 3 people behind me starts throwing up black. And then after that happened, I was fine. I was like, "The hell was that about?"
Scary.
Like you were sensing it, and then
I don't know, but it was like they started to.
So when he started praying, they started throwing up.
Yeah, and I was like, "That's weird." We didn't really talk about it after that, but I was like, "That's kind of a funny one to That's like one of the weirdest stories I have up there.
Jeez.
Just a second, you brought up Ouija boards and kept looking towards yours.
Yeah, I know. yeah, don't be paying attention to that. But I was talking to. We talk about him a lot. He's a minister. He's a prophet, and we talked about a good hour. It was like a random call. He called me at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I called him back at maybe noon because I had to do stuff around town. And I was like, hey, how's it going? It's Weatherly. And he was like, I'm sorry, it was a butt dial. When he said, yeah, he said, I wanted to talk to you today anyways. And I was like, oh, cool. So we talked about a good hour. And he was telling me about things about being down here and having like a resistance in the area. And he says, what's your thought on that? He knows the answer to every question he's giving me. And I know that about him. And I said, I don't know. I said,
almost like a rhetorical question.
Right, yeah. But he wants my answer to it too. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what are you seeing down there? And I said, well, they said there's, I know there's a lot of medicine practice down here. There's a lot of traditional things happen down here, which happens also biblically too. As prophets and apostles like Paul, he met a barrier with tradition too, because the Jewish people had their traditions, but he also had this Christian thing that he wanted to bring, and they had this fight biblically of like you can't pray or work on a Sunday, things like that. Jesus broke those too.
Yeah.
But certain traditions that he was fighting against, and even actions like that in people's lives can, I guess, hinder you in certain things. But he was talking about this with me, and I said, well, there's a lot of that happening around here, and I said it's prominent. And I was telling him, I was like, well, we've talked about this before. It's like we always notice like a slew of deaths when it would be like a cultural sort of time of the year, whether that's like hand games or sun dances, is it'll be like deaths in the area. And I said it's always young people too that pass away. And I said it's not just one; it's a whole.
Yeah, it's like car group. Accidents and everything like that.
Right. And
Grandma would tell us to stay home during those times.
Yeah, and he says, yeah, he said, I wanted to talk about that with you, and he said, how has things been with everybody else? He says, how has it been down there since your grandma passed away? And I said, well, everyone kind of went through some hard things in the past few years, and he says we're talking about the people on the streets, and he says, how about them? And I said they're big in number now. Yeah. I said when he was down here, it was maybe 6 or something we would know about.
There's a lot now.
There's like about 30 of them now. And I was telling him about that, and he said, you know why that is? And I was like, no. And he says, since your grandma passed away, that covering wasn't just on the family or the church. He said it was a covering in the area. And when she passed away, there's no covering there no more. Nobody's taken up that role yet.
Yeah.
And
mantle.
Right. And he said you mentioned that it's gonna piss people off. He didn't use those words, but it's gonna piss people off. And he said he meets a resistance when he comes down here, and that's why he hasn't been down here in years. And I was like, well, would you want to come on the podcast and talk about it? And he was like, yeah, I'd be open to it. And I said, well, we talk about things that just piss people off anyways. Yeah. And I said, I think this is something to talk about. It's a hard conversation I think we have to have, and I guess even in this area, other reservations, is like what's happening on these reservations, what's happening in the communities surrounding them, and what sort of things are going on. And it's not just physical; it's a spiritual thing happening. And whether that's because there are demons that control certain areas. They call them guardians, people.
They're very territorial.
Right? People that are into demonologists and things, they call them guardians. But we're talking about some of that too, and man, he was talking to me a full hour. Where's your Bible at? Get this scripture out. So I was sitting at the table with the Bible for an hour. But he said, yeah, he wants to come on the podcast and talk about that, and talk about what sort of resistances he was getting here.
I noticed that too.
Yeah,
it's very, very, very noticeable, the change.
Right.
I remember even for a while, I kind of started doing that, started praying for this town, praying for these people on the streets. There was even one having the job I have, it used to really frustrate me because they would just trash things like crazy.
Right.
And, you know, it just, they always kind of just show up, trash everything, and then move on. And it was frustrating. And there was one point where I just kind of changed my, basically the way I looked at everything. And I remember this one point, there was probably about seven of them at this one park where they usually gather.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over there, and at that moment, I was frustrated. Right when I showed up there, I was like, you know, I was frustrated, but then something told me to pray for them. And I remember there was seven of them. When I pulled up, they started, you know, getting up and they're going to leave. And I remember they were walking, and they were like literally, they were a ways away. They couldn't hear me. But when I just kind of started praying, and I told God, you know what, you know, just speak to one of them. You know, just speak to at least one of them, you know. And I remember I looked away, and I turned back, and one of them was stopped, and he was standing like dead in his tracks. And the others were walking. He told them, hold on. He said, come back. And they kind of walked back. And he said, we shouldn't be living like this. You know, we're too young for this. And they were young. Mm-hmm. They're like in their 20s. And next thing you know, they were all standing in a circle, holding hands, praying. And I've never seen them again.
Wow.
They were all gone. And, you know, I started doing that. After a while, I talked to a friend of mine, and he would do the same thing. You know, he'd pray with them. You know, he'd stop and pray with them, stuff like that. And after a while, I guess I just kind of lost track of that, lost sight of that, and just stopped. And, you know, just kind of got caught up in my own stuff, kind of busy, you know, not paying attention. And I noticed that too. It just, now it's like out of hand.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It is.
And he was talking about also what's happening with deliverances. Mm-hmm. Is anybody casting out demons? I was like, I don't know. I haven't been around.
Yeah. I remember even right here, like right outside your house.
Yeah.
I remember I pulled up here, and I was in the Mustang, actually. I remember I pulled up here, and I was about to go to church, and then some guy came up to me. He's like, you know, hey, what are you doing? You know, I don't know who this guy was. He was with another dude. And I said, I'm going to church. He said, hey, can you? I said, all right. He was like trying to get money to drink. I said, no, you know, I don't do that. I don't, you know, give people money to drink. Mm-hmm. And I told him that. And here, I remember he's gonna ask me for money, and I said, no, sorry, man, I don't help people, you know, drink. And he's like, all right. And he said, well, pray for me when you're at church. And he's like, pray for that guy. And I said, and then someone told me to pray for him. The second I put my hand out toward him, he started throwing up like this. It was a weird color. Like he stopped and he looked at his drink, like he looked like he was fine, and he just put it down, and he didn't even want to take it anymore. And that guy looked at him, hey, can you pray for me too? He's like, yeah, of course, you know, I'll pray for you guys. But yeah, it was like after that, you know, it's, you know, I'm saying, like caught up in my own thing and just kind of stopped praying for them and stuff like that. And yeah, I noticed that, like, it's like you just turn around and now there's like 30 of them.
Right. And I think that when people are having hauntings, what they would call hauntings, which is just a demon, is I think take a look around your community. What's happening? I mean, literally like look around and see what's happening. What are people doing? Is there anything going on that's like, cultural, or is there something going on that's I guess ceremonial happening around? Is there people practicing witchcraft and things like that in the area? Because those things, if it's not I guess dealt with or regulated in a sense, then it has an effect on the area. And I think people will have more hauntings that way too, especially in area. And it's kind of funny too, because like you go down to the res and you have more hauntings there. It's like the stories nonstop, and that is part of the culture, is the spiritual side of things, ceremonies and things like that.
But there's always somebody that's doing dark things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They usually don't call it like, oh, that guy's a medicine man. But if he's practicing dark things, they say it's a witch.
Right.
They call him a witch. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
And you still do. But I remember there was even a gathering all the time of witches.
Yeah.
Down
Here?
there. Yeah, down
I
in
think
Crow.
I remember something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that all the time.
We met on Tuesdays.
And then
So stupid.
I was talking to a guy that was he used to like he would like practice that stuff like medicine, and he started telling me. I started asking him about that, like dark medicine when people get into dark medicine and stuff, and he said yeah. He said they he said that he said it's really dangerous. He said when they get into that because you get greedy. And he said on top of that, he said when you do something, if you do something to somebody, or if you practice like dark magic, dark medicine, he said it takes from you. He said every time they do it, it takes from you. And not only that, it takes from basically your spirit. You'll be like a basically mindless.
When I was younger, like I don't know, on my mom's side of the family, like real traditional side of the family, I never really knew much about it, but they did explain some things to me and stuff. But I know probably when I was in maybe middle school, one of my uncles was like, I was going out to his house a lot, and he's like, hey, do you want to go? He's like, let's go. We're going to, I think, a night lodge ceremony. And he's like, do you want to go? And I was like, oh, yeah. I thought they were like going to go sing or do something, And he's like, all right, grab this. Like, had me grab some stuff, and he had like some fruit, like canned fruit. I remember he had canned fruit, canned salmon, and like pretty soon he had like dry meat and all this stuff. And we got to this house, and he had his sister's kids with him too. He's like, you guys going or you guys staying? He's like, I guys chicken out again. And I was like, what? And like, he's like, oh, we'll go. He's like, you guys get scared. And two of them like didn't want to go. They said they're gonna stay right off. And he's like, all right. He's like, well, if you get scared, he's like, just cover up, cover your face up. And I was like, man, where are we going to? It kind of had me thinking. And we got there, and he's like, it's almost time to go. It's starting to get dark, And we got to that house, and man, they had blankets up on the windows and everything. And then like even the outlets, they had like taped up and covered. And all the lights, all the lamps, there was like nothing in there. They had one lamp in there, and it was plugged in, and it had an extension cord going out the door, because it had all the lights covered. And there's like a buffalo robe in there. There's multiple buffalo robes in there. They had all this food like offering in the middle. There was a buffalo skull. There was like dirt, and then they had this huge like, it was like almost like a bowl, but it had that dirt in there, and they had cup like water. But they had like juice. They had all kinds of different things there, and I was kind of tripped out by it. But man, they had like arrowheads. I don't remember everything that was in there, but they had like a lot of like native stuff in there. They had bow and arrows in there, and I still didn't know what was going on. And everyone was sitting in a circle, and pretty soon they told him to go take the lights, take the light, and that woman took the light, and then they closed that door, and I don't know if she like taped it up or what. You could hear the tape though, and they had a blanket on the inside. They had a blanket, man. Before you know it was like pitch black in there, and they had rattles, and they started singing, and they're doing whatever they're doing, and man, by then I was like, man, I just felt like, man, I already felt scared, and I was like, I was like, man, what's going on? I was like, shh, just be quiet, man, just be quiet. And man, they started singing, doing their thing, and man, before you know it, you could start hearing those drums. No one was sitting by those drums over here by themselves. You can start hearing those drums getting hit, and man, pretty soon, man, you could hear them like they're floating around in the room. You could hear them behind me. Man, they had those rattles that they use in sweat. Man, you could see those rattles. They're shaking all over, like going different, and everyone was sitting down on the ground. You could see them, and before you know it, you could see them like further than what the house was shaking. And man, by then I started to kind of like panic. I kind of getting scared then, and I was already scared, but I was like about to cover my face, but it was like one of those things that you want to see, you want to know what's going on. So I kept looking, man. You could hear all these birds, man. You could hear those birds. So many birds just go through the house. All those birds, you could hear them go flying through, like as if you're about to get hit, and they're just like going by you, and you could feel that wind like hit you. And the one that always got me is you could hear this elk bugling like right behind me so loud, and I turned, and it's almost like as if I could hear like breathe on me after that. And man, it's crazy. You could hear these like whistles going off, and I remember hearing a bear. Never heard a bear in my life, like out in the hills, but like man, I heard this bear like make this crazy noise, and they kept singing, and they were saying something in this. I don't know what that guy was saying though, because I can't understand, his talking. But I just felt like real scared, and then they stopped and they were all talking. Everyone okay? They're checking on everyone, and I was like, Dakota, you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm all right. And they're like, no, are you right? And then they're like,
voice all shaky.
I was like, I was sitting there, then I looked over, and the other boy, the one that was younger than me, like he was like straight up covered up in that buffalo robe, like, and they lifted it off him. They brought the light in, and like the drums and everything that was in there, they were like all in different places, and the rattles, and then all that food was gone. And I was like, and I was just kind of like I was like checking everyone's like mouth, I was kind of like looking around, and my uncle's like,
seeing if anybody ate it. Is that what you did?
Yeah, my uncle's like, are you all right, man?
Can we get this bear out of here?
Uncle's like, are you
Someone's
all right?
walking the bear out.
He's like, you okay? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm all right. And he's like, what did you hear? He's like, don't worry about it. And I was like, all right. And man, they adjusted, they put everything back where it was, adjusted everything, and they're kind of talking, and like, I looked over at that guy, man. He was kind of like, looked like he was kind of like played out a little bit. Like you could tell his, like some of his energy was gone from when we first started.
Mm-hmm.
And like, all right, well, they fixed it all up. They kind of put some more food, and man, they started doing their thing again. And then like the same thing happened again. But man, I know there was I remember a couple girls being in there, but man, I could like hear these like other women in there like luluing, and I could hear these other guys singing, and compared to like my uncle's voice and the other three guys that were there, that wasn't their voice. That's not how they sing. And man, I just remember like, man, I had like the real bad chills, and like I felt real cold, and it's just, I don't know, it was real scary after that happened. Like they did a couple more rounds of that, and we got done, and then like everyone's all happy, and I was like, man, what just happened, Yeah, and like the same thing. I remember the one that I was thinking about was this hummingbird, and I knew it had it because at my grandma's house, she always had flowers. And I remember I'd lay out there on this hammock, and these hummingbirds would fly around, and my grandma always had that nectar for them. And I remember them getting so close to me. That's the thing I liked, but I knew that was a hummingbird. And after we got done, we just ate, and then they're asking me, what'd you all hear? I told them everything that I heard and like what I seen, and I guess everyone else hears different things and sees different things. But I know at some point, like when I seen like a butterfly fly through there too, but the butterfly was like glowing.
What the hell?
Tripped me out.
Like
Wow.
Bruno. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We don't talk about him.
I got real. I know that last one, like it got like so much stuff was going on. Like that last one, I had to like close my eyes, and like I kind of felt real uncomfortable after that.
What the heck, man? That's crazy.
I watch too many kids movies.
We don't talk about them.
I don't know. It's crazy to see those things and hear those stories, because we also have. Does he still practice medicine? Is he still medicine?
Talking about Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was talking about coming on the podcast and talking with us and telling his stories.
I want to hear his stories, man.
And
I heard some of his stories, and wow, dude.
He's 84, I think. Something like that. He was telling us. We've gotten really close in the past year or so. And he's like always coming up and talking to me, always happy to see me. And then he was trying to come over yesterday or the day before yesterday, something like that.
It was the day before.
Like he thought I lived in Billings.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, he's gonna come over and he's gonna visit with me, and we're gonna talk about coming on the podcast. He knows how we are, though. He knows that we're not traditional or anything, and he respects that. He always tells me. But he was gonna come on the podcast, but hearing those stories it's crazy, because people always say, well, what about, like, why is it that these things have more things happening in them than whether that's a Christian thing? And why does those things happen like that? And that's kind of the pull in too, is the way demons work, and how I guess God works is they're called, what the hell they call them? There's a specific thing I was looking at. Anyways, that talks about a demon, and it's able to portray things like that are magical or mystical, kind of peacock itself. And from that, it draws you in because you actually see something. You actually see what's happening in the room.
Like it entices you.
Right. It's able to entice you in such a way to say, oh, this works.
Yeah.
And then that kind of drops you into that hole too. It pulls you in. And it's the same thing with faith. It's like that's a different thing. It's like it's this side of things is there's the demonic side that will get you pulled into whether that's sickness. People that are connected to you too can have sickness too. I mean, that it won't just happen in your household. It'll happen with your connections. You'll notice that certain people around you will start going through certain situations, dark times, sickness, financial issues, because demons have a big play in that too. Things like that, nightmares, car accidents, things like that happen. And this is like a big thing with, like, I guess the story of Moses comes to mind, is the Pharaoh had his magicians and they were able to do magic and things, and then comes along Moses, and Moses has to almost prove himself that God can, I guess, mystify you in such a way, right? Because he has these these magicians kind of baiting him and saying, basically, where's your God? And that was the whole thing with the staff turned into a serpent.
Like, oh, can your God do this?
Yeah.
Can your God do that?
And then his magicians start saying, you're playing with the big boys now. No. But they try to reenact that, and it's hard.
Yeah, like every time they did something, Moses would do it on a greater scale.
Right.
And just like when they turned their staffs into snakes, so did Moses, but his actually swallowed theirs up.
Right.
Yeah, stuff like that.
And it's when you're in a room when something's happening, it's a totally different feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've been in rooms, like we mentioned before, it's people with exorcisms happening, which you would classify as exorcisms. And when you're in that room, the whole world shifts, like, it seems like, you know what I mean? Like, why isn't everybody else experiencing something like this?
Yeah.
Why is it just us in this room? You know what I mean?
Like, you don't even think of anything going on outside the room you're in.
Yeah.
Like, everything's like shut out, and what's happening in front of you, that's the only thing you can literally think about.
Right. And I know from experience, I guess, is when there is somebody who is about to be, I guess someone's coming to come pray over them, cast out a demon. Sometimes the minister doesn't know that's what's going to happen yet.
Yeah.
Until they get into the room.
But
and
the demon in there knows.
Right. And then it reacts to that person. But even as far as the minister's action to move to that place, the demon already knows what's happening.
Yeah.
There's something coming for it, basically. And then it's able to control the person in a way through thoughts, putting thoughts in their head, saying to leave the place or things like that. Try to, I guess.
Yeah, they they'll literally know when that person's coming.
Right.
Either in the building or the house, they'll try to leave.
Right.
Like something in them tells them get out. Tries to get away.
And that's the whole thing is it's able to control the person in such a way the person thinks it's actually them.
Yeah, they think it's their own thoughts. Like, I gotta go. I don't know why, but I gotta go.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to watch. Like when you see those people reacting that way, they'll get uncomfortable themselves. Like their physical self will get uncomfortable. But it's actually this demon inside of them reacting to it.
It's noticeable. Like even like if you're in church, if you're sitting in church, and you know the minister he starts speaking about certain things, they don't like it.
Right.
They start reacting. You can tell they start getting uncomfortable. Maybe they get up and go to the bathroom, or they go outside, or they just start getting really uneasy, or they start crying for no reason.
Yeah.
Like it's noticeable. You
can
tell.
those things, like them crying out, like sometimes we're in a place, and I didn't understand this growing up, but I do now, is when someone's getting prayed for, if they're over the top, you know what I mean? Crying or laughing or something like that, that could be the demon trying to.
Oh, right there.
I don't know which socks, but it could be the demon trying to manifest and mock. Is when you see a deliverance happening,
or interrupt.
Yeah, or interrupt. And this minister that we're talking about that's going to come on, is these things follow him nonstop.
Yeah.
You talk to him, there's like always something new. And, you're with him and it's nonstop. There's demons getting cast out all the time. And it's just something, because I mean, when he gets in the area, we follow him around different places and we help him out and stuff. And it follows him. But yeah, sitting around that and growing up around that, there's certain ways in the spiritual that things work. There's like an order to things. There's a hierarchy with spiritual, well, not only just their offices like a prophet and apostle and things, but there's also a hierarchy with demonic things too. Same thing with angels. But yeah, the way the person is reacting, and people you might say is like, well, we're not. If you're a Christian, they'll be like, well, we're not warring against flesh and blood, but there are demons who can influence.
Yeah.
I guess what we categorize as flesh and blood is to use them as a way to stop somebody, like a minister or something, to lash out at this person. And we were talking about this for a while too. And it's just something that if you don't pay attention to it, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But when you're someone like this person, him coming on, he notices it. He knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's not the person. It's something influencing that person.
Yeah. Like I remember even mom telling a story about she was in the hospital and this guy walks in. You could just tell, that there's something with this guy. And I remember he was acting weird. And she said she started talking, I think it was to Kalia, and telling her that there's something, attached to that guy. And I think Kalia was scared or something. And she told her, you just got to pray. And even mom started singing. This guy was out of earshot of her, and she was singing really quietly. And when she started singing this gospel song really quietly, that guy started singing really loud, a different song. Like he started singing really loud and being really like obnoxious. Mm-hmm. And then she said, Kalia kind of started getting a little scared. And she said, when you say the name Jesus, it throws him back 50 feet. And then she just didn't even say it loud. She just said Jesus. And this guy was like, kind of stopped. And next thing you know, she said it again and again. And this guy just had to leave the building. Like he just just gone.
Right.
Like they can sense you.
Yeah.
They can. So like, that's what I mean. Like when he's, in a service and you see somebody trying to interrupt, he'll literally call them out like right there.
Yeah.
Tell him like, shut up, demon,
Yeah.
He'll do that. And it's just like, it's something to see. Like when he's there, I love listening to him.
Yeah.
Like his services and everything, or listening, even just talking to him,
Yeah.
Yeah. He always has like so much to tell you about, so much insight.
Yeah. He kept having to say, I'm not preaching at you. It's just how I talk. But it's, he's going to be coming on the podcast and
we talked about him a lot on this podcast.
I want to build it up to a point where people have their questions, have him answer it. And we're talking about deaths too. We talked about demons. We talked about what's happening in the church. Like, what do you see down here? Things like that. And it's like not just being in church. It's like what's happening. Like what's happening in the community. Like how is the church interacting? Things like that. He's going to answer some hard questions, I think.
Yeah.
He's going to address some things. And I think it's something to talk about. And I told him about the podcast, and I told him about the following we have, things we talk about. And I said we always kind of lean that direction anyways, of like, we always bring up like biblical things and whatnot and try to talk about it that way, 'cause that's the only way that makes sense to us. But
something
right, yeah. And I said, well, we have people that are going to be on the podcast who are like mediums and things, and try to get their take. And I told him we rank in the paranormal because we talk about paranormal things and whatnot, and he's like excited to come on and talk about it.
Yeah.
So it'll be something interesting.
Yeah, it will be.
You guys reminded me of something too, because at work, and this was after Dad had passed away, and Hoss Jack came in, and I didn't even know he was going to be here, but he ended up being at a revival at Larry Boy's church. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was taking stuff down the hallway and I seen them, and I felt bad because they were talking to someone, and I like just completely stopped talking to her and like greeted me. And then he didn't even know about Dad yet.
Really?
But Jessica knew, and she gave me a hug, and then she was like, I love you and stuff, and I said love you, and then I kept going down the hall, and then he ended up like coming to look for me, Haas, and he found me because I was in the laundry room, and during this time, like during that hour, like the dryers are going, the washer's going, and it's really loud, and you can't hear anything outside the hall, just right there. And he kind of like motioned me to go over, so I went and I was talking with him, and he gave his condolences and everything, gave me a hug, and so I was like letting him know, like, yeah, like just pray for the family and like pray for Mom, and like he's that type of person, like he doesn't care where you are, like people could be a room full of people or like a building full of people, and he'll just pray for you right there.
Yeah.
And he started doing this, and the person that I work with, I noticed because I kind of like looked up, and he was weirding out in the laundry room. Yeah, like he was rubbing his neck, and he was like going like this, like looking around, and he kept walking back and forth, like pacing, and he looked like panicked.
Like he got uneasy.
And I just kind of like noted it, and just kind of like, but I put my head down and like, kept receiving, the prayer. And then after that, like another person in there heard him praying for me, and then like, so down the hallway, because I like end up walking down the hall, and like he was praying for her, and I end up walking back, and he was still praying for her. And that guy, when I walked into that laundry room, he was doing the same thing
in that room.
And he looked really like uneasy, and he
he doesn't even have to be around him when he's praying. He just knows, like something in him knows.
Yeah, because at the second I walked into the laundry room, you couldn't hear Haas anymore. But this guy was like freaking out, and then he walked out into the hall and like kind of listened, and he's like, and he had to leave outside the building, and he was out there until Haas was done, and then he came back in, and he was like, oh man, I just had to go like take a breath out. And then I just kind of looked at him weird, and I didn't know anything about this guy at that time. And then I ended up wearing my sweater that I have, the one that has Lilith on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I hung it up, and he seen that picture on it, and he brought up that he used to be a witch.
That guy did?
Yep. And he took off his the shirt that he wears, and you could see his tattoos, and he has like really demonic tattoos on him.
Wow.
And he has a whole like back piece too, and like you could see like naked women on his shoulder, and it's a witch, and like just how she looks, it looks like real creepy. And that's when it clicked. And I was like, oh, I was like, that's why he was freaking out. And I noticed now, like he's more like kind of like hostile towards me. Like he's just real angry that I'm there, and he's always trying to get rid of me. But it's because I always, like even before I knew that, I would always pray over the building.
Yep.
And then like pray over everyone else, and he just changed the second I started doing that, because this was like a month in that I started working there, and he switched.
Yeah.
And then now he like doesn't like me, and I'm just like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Well, it was probably a disturbing something, and he couldn't pinpoint where it was.
Yeah.
Until that. And that's probably why.
Yeah, and then he realized like what family I come from, because he's seen my tattoo and it says Enoch. And he's like, who's your family? And then he's like, you're an Enoch. And I was like, my mom is. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, who are you related to? I was like, all the Enochs here. I was like, that's our family. And he's like, oh, okay. But then he tried to say like, oh, like I went to church, this and that. But then he said he started like drinking and stuff, and that's when he fell into all that. Mm. So I was like, all right.
That makes sense now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like something like whatever is in the nose. I remember one time, well, I'm not going to say his name, but he started getting really uneasy. And I know why. He was looking for the devil. And our brother said he found him. And I remember he was at our house, and then he was like, hey, let's go for a drive, or hey, do you want to go to the store real quick, or hey, trying to get out. And I was like, oh, we will, don't worry about that, I was like, yeah, just chill out. And he was like really uneasy, pacing like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, I was gonna go outside real quick, and he right when he went to the door, Grandma walked in, and she told him sit down. She already knew. Sit down, like like with authority, the way she said it. And he stopped, and he sat down. And nobody said anything. Nobody told her what he was doing. She already knew. And then she just started praying for him. And the way he reacted, oh my God. he like, it was one of the most intense ones I've ever seen. Is when they're casting that demon out of him, and he was like on all fours. He had his fists to the ground, like. And I remember Uncle Lewis was even there, and all he did was put his hand on him like this, like barely put his hand on him while he was praying. And I was in the room too, and our brother was in there, and I remember he was trying to get up, and he was like, his arms were shaking, like he couldn't push up, and he was screaming and he was cussing and everything. And talking to him after, he explained why. He said that he was screaming, he couldn't get up, and I remember he brought over a bowl because when they cast it out, they throw it up.
I think it's Mom's candy bowl.
This thing was thick. Like this thing was really thick.
20
But
years
it even
old.
got on the carpet, remember, and it was stained.
This bowl was
forever.
really thick. Like you try to grab one of those bowls and like pull on it, this thing is solid. I remember we put it in front of him.
Try to Napoleon Dynamite it.
Yeah, he did. But the thing is, he did.
Uncle Rico.
Yeah, he didn't even struggle. Like the second they put that in front of him, he just went like this, and the thing shattered.
Jeez.
Like it just shattered all over the room. And I remember Mom's face, like,
like she's gonna keep
I
it
like
after.
that bowl. Yeah, she goes and gets another one, puts it in front of him, and then he started screaming, and he was like cussing and everything. And I remember he was trying to get up, and he was like, he kept pushing like this, and then his arms would shake, and he was like clawing at the ground. And I remember he started like dry heaving, and then finally he started crying out for Jesus, and he was screaming, and then finally he started throwing it up, and it's always the weirdest color every single time. And he threw up, and yeah, you're right, half of them missed the bowl.
It was on the rug
Yeah.
for years.
But then afterwards,
red.
after that happened, he was telling me what was going on, like inside of him when that was happening. He said he was burning and all this other stuff. And he said, "Who was standing on my back?" I said, "Nobody was standing on your back." He's like, "No." Somebody had their foot on my back and was like pushing down really hard. I said, "No." I said, "Somebody barely had their hand on you like this, and they're praying." He said he couldn't even get up.
Jeez.
He said it was holding him down.
Wow.
So he said, I was trying to get up and I was trying to leave. And he said it was like literally like he felt like somebody was standing on his back. And all he was holding his hand on him like that. But yeah, talking to our brother, I was there. I was outside, but he was at the grandstands, and there's a dark room in the back. And he said that's where he went. And I remember hearing him scream, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And when I talked to our brother, later, he said that he like looked up and he said he saw something. He said it looked like brown smoke going into his mouth. He said like
goosebumps.
Yeah, he said it was going into his mouth.
The nun.
Yeah.
It was the nun.
But yeah, he said no. He said I saw it go inside of him. He told me before even Grandma came over.
Wow. And she was on. She was well documented too. There was a incident. How am I saying
I know.
words weird?
What did you say earlier?
I don't remember. So, anyways, there was an occurrence, and she was called to the house, and they had it documented with the police that this guy was throwing a couch across the room.
Yep.
Jeez.
With one hand.
Yeah.
A couch like that.
And the cops called Grandma to come over.
During that before they even showed up,
Scary.
he was not himself, man. Even when he talked, his breath smelled like sulfur.
Wow.
And he'd sit in the corner of the room, and when the lights were on like this, the corner of the room where he was sitting in, no light would touch that corner around him where he was sitting, and he would just sit there. And then yeah, when all that happened and those cops came, I remember our cousin asked those cops. He said, what do you believe in? And they're like, "Why?" And he said, "You'll find out. You're gonna learn today." And he said that they came in. He literally would, like, he was pissed, man, and he would just literally a couch that you would have to have two people pick up. He would just go like this, and that thing would fly across the room. And he was throwing things like that. He was throwing these cops around like nothing, and it took everybody to pile on him and just hold him down. And yeah, he was just.
Yeah.
Until Grandma got there. When she got there, it was a whole different story.
Yeah.
It reminds me of someone, Merville was telling me that
one of those cops became he was preaching after that.
Yeah, he told me about it.
After that happened.
Yeah. Someone was trying to cast out a demon at church, and the preacher was trying to say, "Come out of there, devil," and he's like, "Come out of there, Jesus." He's like, "I mean, stay in there, Jesus."
I remember Uncle Francis telling a story. He was ministering at a new place, something like that, and he was brushing his teeth. And he said he gagged himself in accident while someone was knocking on the door asking if he's all right. And he's behind the door going, "Come out, come out." And he's got to go preach like right now.
That go off?
That one did.
Okay. Yeah, it's not something to take lightly. Like there was even this one guy who was like, "Oh, I can cast a demon out," you know.
Dangerous.
He was saying, "Yeah, it's dangerous."
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was thinking like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," you know. So he figured he'd do it. And I can't remember if it was on his wife or something that he started praying, and she dropped on the ground and started slithering like a snake. Ew. She started chasing him around his whole house.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Not even joking. Like a snake, dude. Like literally arms down, just slithering, chasing him, and he freaked out. And what he ended up calling a pastor, and I can't remember who else showed up there, but he found out it's nothing to play with, man.
Yeah, there was one
to take lightly.
Remember that one that happened on TV like that?
Yeah, I remember that.
She started slithering like a snake.
Yeah.
There's another one. Her name is Catherine Kuhlman. Yeah. They say these ministers, I know Benny Hinn was one. He said you stand over her bones and you can still feel the anointing that she had on her. But he always watched her, and he's wondering why she talks so much and tells stories and whatnot. And he says he realized later on what she was doing was waiting for an anointing to drop. Mm-hmm. And she knew what she was doing, but she would wait. And I remember telling Mom about her because I was watching her for a long time after. I still watch her here and there. But Mom said, yeah, she gave me the creeps as a kid. You watch her, you'll understand what I mean. But it's just the way she was. She's a really sweet woman, but just the way she talks, like really old school. But there was a story about her, and she was praying somewhere, and there was this big stage, and she walked off of it. And she was...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She was midair, and everyone was freaking out, but she kept walking, and she was walking on air off of the stage. And they said she looks down, realizes where she is, and then calmly walks back onto the stage.
Like she didn't lose faith.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, that's freaking crazy. Yeah, things like that happen, and it's I feel like it's like there's like a shift happening. You know what I mean? Like you notice all these things happening. There's nonstop deaths now.
I was talking to my a cousin about that, and I told him I said I want to say it, but I said I could see it. So I told him, I said I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of deaths soon, and as soon as that happened, it was just death after death after death after death, like crazy.
And then Weatherly was talking about that with me too. He says, have you noticed, I asked him why. He says maybe he'll answer later, but he says, when one passes away, 3 follow. Mm-hmm. He's like, is that happening? He's like, yeah, it's happening. It's like there's like 3 deaths in our family within like a couple months. Mm. And it's like it just follows.
It's just here.
Yeah. And this place has to be one of the busiest places for deaths. Now you notice it happening more in Billings, a lot of deaths happening there, but it's weird to watch. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like all these different mishaps. Crime has gotten way crazy in Billings.
Way out of hand. Not even just there.
Yeah.
Around here in Crow on the reservation. It's like nuts right now.
Right. Everyone sees the physical things happening, but that's not where you start. I mean, it's a spiritual thing happening, and it has a mass impact on the physical and happenings and whatnot.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
I think that's crazy, like how you say that, because I always remember hearing older people talk about like when natives pass away, it's like never just one. Like they always go by the fours, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know why it's that way. But like how you guys are talking about like the hand games and everything. I was talking to someone about this, and they're just like, oh, you know, like you're just on something else, or like just kind of like blew it off.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling them, I was like, man, I noticed anytime the Fort Robinson run happens, as like people always pass away, and the Fort Robinson runs around the beginning of January, and usually that's around when Zelda's birthday is, and then that's when my brother passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And when my brother passed away, there was like three other deaths, and then there was one of my buddies like passed away, and my brother was on his way back because he was in hospice care. He's like, "Did you hear that about that car wreck?" And I was like, "Yeah." I told him, he's like, "I figured it was him," and I was like, "Yeah." And I talked to my buddy's mom about it, and she was the only one that kind of agreed with it a little bit. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I always wondered if as like the years I've been on the Fort Robinson run too, like we always get the news and like they'll just pull over wherever and they'll start praying, you know, like, oh, someone just passed away, like back home, like someone just passed away, and they'll pray. And I got to thinking, I was like, man, I noticed all the years I went, or that it's always around that time they always end up having to stop somewhere and they pray because someone passed away. It's like the same thing about four people, and there's like funerals kind of back to back. But I noticed that, and I talked to some people. Like I said, it's kind of like blew it off. And I was telling someone one day, I was like, man, I was wondering if the people that pass away, if they're like old spirits, or like that passed away when the Fort Robinson run happened, because a lot of people died on their way back from that, and like that's just like their time to go because of the run.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a couple people kind of thought about it, like I never thought of it that way, and some people kind of put their input on it. But just her telling me about like the whole thing with like when Sundance, I don't know, like Sundance happens, and then like hand games that people pass away, and I brought that up to my dad, and my dad said he's always thought of that, like he didn't want to mention it because it's gonna get someone mad, you know. Like,
Yeah.
if I say it, it's gonna like frustrate someone, and then they're gonna like have a different opinion on it and think of you like differently. So he said he's always thought of it that way, but he said he never wanted to bring it up because he wouldn't want to be like the wrong person. But like
Right.
with like this generation, people being more open minded and thinking of things and like thinking of looking more into the past of the way things been happening, and it keeps happening, and it's like a cycle. Like it's kind of bringing it more forward to people, and like older people are kind of realizing it, but some don't want to accept it either
Right.
as well, you know. Because no one wants to like accept something new, you know.
Yeah.
Kerry Thomas Cody actually sent me a video on YouTube, and he was asking about hand games and stuff like that. And then he sent me a video. He's like, I found this, and it was actually, somebody
From
down
Crow.
here made it.
I think
Yeah,
you
from
sent
Crow.
that to me.
Yeah, and on the video at the very end, like, because I remember bringing out some people, and they try to, say that too. You're like, it's just a coincidence or this or that, and literally, this guy's like teaching you about hand games and everything. They're showing the game. They're like talking about the history on it, all that stuff. And at the very end, he talks about the deaths. And he says,
I have to go
but
back
the
and
way he
watch.
words it, he talks like, they're going to die anyway. Like it's always older people that's never older people. It's always young people in their 20s,
Yeah.
late 20s, early 30s. They're always the ones that end up dying. Teenagers.
Right.
And I've noticed it was never old people. But this guy was talking like, they're about to die anyway. So it's just, they end up,
Yeah.
I was like, that's not true. Like I noticed that from my observation.
Yeah. It's
I
always,
don't see that to be true.
it's always been younger people dying. It's never been like you notice people passing away. There's always like a pattern, whether that's like a slew of older people or a slew of younger people. And then the younger people, when that happens, it never stops. It just happens and it keeps happening. And sometimes when there's suicides, there's different people who commit suicide too.
Yeah.
And it's always takes like almost like a loop around the res and around like Hardin and Billings, people killing themselves.
Yeah.
It's like a pattern.
Oh yeah, like another one. Like I was saying that I think it was 2 years ago around the winter time. Like they brought up that someone froze like in Lame Deer. I think it was Ashland. My dad was talking about like, yeah, they found this person. He like froze like outside on his own steps, you know. I was like, what? Like how's that happen at his own house? You know what he did? Obviously he's drinking, but like just couldn't get in. I just fell asleep on the porch, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of days later, I find out on Facebook that another boy that's from our res froze on another reservation though, and then it was like the same thing. He said that
Wow.
he fell asleep. He laid down on the porch and he froze. And then like later on, I hear that someone froze around here, and I told my dad, I was like, man, it's crazy how like all within this 2 weeks that there's three different people that froze.
Died the same way.
Yeah, it's like, but it's all on 3 different reservations. It's like both of them are from our res, but one that happens on like miles away, you know. And I was like, who knows? What if that person that happened here was like from our res too? And my dad's like, could be. I was like, but it's just crazy how it all happened like within 1 week, but each of them like froze different places, you know.
There's even someone saying that they that happens when they play too much.
Oh, really?
This is when people start dying.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it's crazy, like, to talk about or even think about, especially being here, because, like, you know, like people come from all over the world to see, like, you know, Crow Fair, stuff like that, and like just see the culture, because, like, you know, Native American culture, it's a beautiful culture, you know. It is, like, the regalia they have, all the, you know, everything they do. Like, I like going down there, you know, and seeing it. And like we grew up there, but like I'm a tourist.
You're talking like you're not Crow.
Yeah, I like to travel down there
And see those
right
people.
Yeah, but no, it's crazy. But like with everything, every culture, there's always a dark side.
Right.
You know, there's always something dark. There's always somebody doing something wrong. There's always somebody doing something, you know, like with witchcraft in any culture.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are people that practice witchcraft or dark medicine, and like talking to people actually, you know, that do that stuff or have done that stuff, and actually listening to them, you know, tell me about it, and all the things that happens when they practice dark medicine, and how, you know, people end up. And there was even a story, I think it was from Sam told. He said that somebody was calling goatmen.
Oh, wow.
Like summoning goatmen.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he did it, you know, and he said that this guy noticed. I think it was Sam that noticed. And I want to say it was Sam, but he told him, you know, we don't do that, you know, we don't pray to him, we don't call on people like that. You know, he said the crows don't do that. You know, we don't do that kind of thing. You know, that's dark magic, and we don't do that. And he said that guy ended up doing it anyway, and here comes that black car.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Do you think Goatman, there's more than one?
Like, I always thought it was devil.
Right. Well,
the way they described it.
I think like he could probably, the same thing as like most people know, it could come in like many different forms, you know?
yeah.
Or are you thinking it could be one of those demons that are
Right. Yeah.
of an
But
area?
like, how do they manifest that way, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like we were
Like physically?
right, we talked about that. It's like it's not biblical to manifest as like a full demonic, you don't see like a whole demon thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I don't know. We'll have to ask. I'll have to look. But they're disembodied. Demons are disembodied. That's why they took on the pigs. When they were cast out, they asked to go to the pigs, and those pigs ended up jumping off a cliff.
Yeah. Legion.
Right.
Legion of
killed
demons.
a bunch of pigs. But and that's the thing too, is like demons, the way they look for someone to inhabit for rest, and their rest is torturing the person. That's how they sleep, or how they rest their, I guess, unbodies their bodies.
Man, one thing I thought, like, well, you guys' grandma too thought it was pretty crazy. I was talking to her because I was telling her how, like, how one side of my family is like real traditional, and the other side's like a lot of like cowboys, you know, and cows, horses, all that. And I was telling her how I went to school. It was like a Catholic school. So at the same time, I really didn't know like what to choose, you know. It's kind of, then I knew all about like, you know, the peyote meetings, all that. I never really went in them. I've tried like peyote, did that, you know, and I've known all about these things. I've asked questions, and some of it I was like still not sure what to believe in or what to try, and then I still went to church and prayed and everything. But I was telling her like I wasn't sure if I was ever taught the right way to pray, and she's like, you teach yourself, you know, people can guide you. But I was telling her ever since I was younger, I've noticed that I'd always come across like Christian Pentecostal, and it's like, it's crazy how me and her ended up meeting, and like ended up being around this more like Christians, like going to these revivals and stuff. Because when I was younger, I got in a fight at school, and they kicked me out. And my dad was like a bus driver then, and they hired him to go to Denver. And I didn't know what was going on. My dad was mad. He's like, man, I'm supposed to be going to Denver, like taking all these guys to Denver, and you're supposed to be in school, or supposed to be staying with your grandma. He's like, your grandma don't want you home alone. He's like, now I got to take you. He's like, all upset. And anyway, we headed to Denver, and here we end up at this huge revival. I didn't know what it was, but my dad drove him down there, drove this whole church down there, and I was at this revival. I didn't know what it was, and my dad explained it to me, and I thought it was pretty crazy, and like everything that was going on. And then like I got back by then I had to go back to school, and I was telling him about it. And my teacher thought it was pretty crazy. He's like, huh? He's like, so you ended up like getting kicked out of school, going to church, you know? He's like, did you pray and all that? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I didn't know much about it, because I was like telling him how like people try to believe in different things, you know? So I seen that, and I was telling you guys' grandma about that, and I told her like just a few years later again, I got in trouble at another school. And I got sent home, and I was like expelled for like 5 days. Same thing. We ended up going to Rapid City, and my grandma she was upset, but she like didn't mind it. She's like, well, you got to come with us now either way, you know. And we go stay over at this hotel called Dakota, and here we were there, and there's a good little swim park there, and we just went down there just because that's where my auntie and them stayed. But here I ended up walking in, and they had this huge revival going on there, and my grandma, I don't know, she's at a casino, and everyone else was swimming, and here I just go walking in, and here there's this revival, and I just go sit down in there. I was like, man, what's going on in here? Like everyone's, you know, doing their thing in there, and I was like, oh, this is like the one in Denver, and I thought it was crazy. And then I went to my grandma, yeah, they're having a revival in there, and then all these guys, certain people were talking to me, shaking my hand and stuff. And a few more days later, when I get into high school, we end up at a Billings hotel, and like we break down up there for like a week, me and my dad. And the same thing, I go walking into there was big conference rooms, and the same thing, I go sit down in there. I thought there was a wedding going on one side, and here I go walking in, and that's when like I see like the Tishka family. I probably ran into your guys' family then too.
Probably we were there every year.
I went walking in there, and I was like, oh, check it out, Ben. Like, man, walked in on another revival. And like, oh, let's get out of here, let's go swimming. And I told my dad, my dad's like, oh, chilling in the bar, and he's like, oh, did you guys go get prayed for or what? And he's like talking to like my brother's buddy Brandon's parents, and it's like, oh yeah, we came here for like the revival, you know, it's around this time, around Christmas time, like we come here every year, that one that goes on up there.
Yeah.
And like we came here for the revival, and my dad's like, yeah, he's like, pretty crazy, huh, son? He's like, right into another one, huh? I was like, yeah. And then I didn't really think nothing of it, but once again, a couple years down the road again, I think it was outside of Lambda or in Coast Chip, like we went down there, something was going on down there. But I just seen this tent over there, and I was like bored out with what was going on over here. And I go over there, and they're having a revival, and they're all playing the drums and everything. And I thought I was kind of told my dad that I seen it down there. He's kind of laughing, and my dad told me, he's like, "Oh man, maybe you're going to the wrong church, you know." And I was like, because I did go to the Catholic church with my buddies, because they had to go to church every Sunday. And when I stay with them, the rule was, you know, you stay the night, you got to go to church with us in the morning, you know.
Yeah.
So I was going to that, but then I was like, oh man, I don't think that church is for me. And I was telling your grandma, and she thought it was funny. She's like, well, maybe that was like your calling, like pulling you towards it. Like, she's like, you end up way in Denver, you end up at the revival.
But every
you know?
time you're at church.
Yeah, and then I'm around it all the time. And she's like, maybe that was like your calling. Maybe that's like they knew you two would meet up. And I was like, yeah, I never thought of it that way in town now. I was like, but I'd always come across like these revivals everywhere I'd end up. And like we'd go down to South Dakota a lot, and every time we're down there would be a revival going on.
Yeah.
So me and her, she thought that was pretty funny, and it made her happy like when I told her about that. But then when I brought it up to my dad thought it was pretty nuts. He's like, man, that is crazy. He's like, here, that's what their family is about. That's like their church. And he's like, I was like, remember you told me like maybe you're going to the wrong church? And I was like, yeah, because I never did really like the I don't know, the only way I could explain it is like Catholic church, like the way reminds me of like Halo, you know, like the theme song and stuff like that. And I was like bored out in there, and I was telling my dad, I was like, no, because my dad was in jail then, and he's like, where you at, son? And I'm like, because he could hear it, you know.
Yeah.
And he said that when he was in jail, but he said that he like started crying when he was in jail, and like I hadn't talked to my dad then in like two years. And we're down at the church in Crow, and he's like, "You're at a revival, huh?" And he's like, "You know what? I'm just gonna let you get back to it." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, he's like, "I'll call tomorrow." And we didn't talk for like a couple of years then. And he's like, "You know," and he's like, "I'm just gonna let you get back to it." He's like, that made my day." He's like, "They ended up there." And then the next day we talked about it, and he's like, "It's crazy that you're at a revival." He's like, "Do you remember all those ones like you would end up at all the time when you're younger?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's crazy how that worked out." He's like, "And that's like where your wife's family's from and like what they're about and everything." He's like, "It's." And later on, after talking to your grandma, I told him, I was like, it's almost like it was like meant to be. He's like, well, he's like, I guess that's like the church that you do belong to, you know?
I remember like being in the Catholic service, and it was like so different.
Yeah.
It was way different. Like I didn't know what was going on. Like I didn't. Like everybody stands up, I'm still sitting. I'm like, what's going on? I get up and they all sit down. Like,
yeah. Like,
what? I'm like, what page you guys on? Everybody keeps repeating something. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know.
I just sat there. I just sat there.
When we traveled with Grandpa,
it was like way different. I was like, what?
we traveled with Grandpa, and he would preach in Catholic churches too.
Mm-hmm.
And he would preach in Mormon churches and Jehovah's Witness. They would invite him to those churches.
But he wouldn't do it like
not
like their
he was
kind
like
of service.
a Pentecostal preacher inside of a Catholic church. That's what he would do, and we'd be there.
It's funny, like when somebody's not used to that, and then they get Uncle Francis.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
He's not quiet at all.
Like a dad's funeral.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone was like
Yeah.
our
what?
traditional side of the family. It just kind of seemed
Like kind of what's going on? I remember even Chuck and Sarah's dad were there, and they loved it.
Yeah.
they freaking loved it. Who is that guy? I love that guy. He said it was so different. He was like, that was a way different kind of funeral, you know? He's like, it was just. He said the way Uncle Francis was, they just loved him.
It didn't seem different to us because like we're used to it, but
yeah, no, I was like, this is normal.
Alethio's family thought it was crazy too. They're talking about it to me. He's like, that guy up there. I was like, oh, it's my uncle.
That is funny. When I was little and I ended up sleeping over at Snowy's house on Saturday, and she's like, well, you can go with us to church, and they're Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
They went to St. Dennis, and then when Leanne told us to go sit on the pews, I just busted out laughing.
The what?
And I was like, why would you call it that? Because like that's what Mom would say when she was washing us up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, time to wash your pews. And like I started laughing. And so the whole time in church I was just giggling, and she didn't know why, and she asked me after, and I told her, and then her face was just bright red and she just started laughing.
I took off, like jumped out my window, and I ended up in California. And I went to church in California. And right when I was walking up, I saw a car that was Montana plates. Walk in, and he just stops, and he's up there at the pulpit. He just has the biggest smile looking at me like, oh, great. Here we go. Literally states away, and out of all the churches anywhere, he's at the one that I walk into.
That's freaking funny.
Oh, man. He's funny.
I think it'll be interesting going forward with that, having him come on.
Who, Weatherly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think it'll be interesting.
It'll be a different podcast. I mean, we've done a few of these podcasts where we get like backlash here and there. Mm-hmm. And I think it has that possibility.
This one's going to be way different.
Right.
Yeah.
It has a possibility of that, but we have this strange listening base to where we can defer from their beliefs, but they still support it. They still listen to the podcast. Mm-hmm. They still let us know that they like the podcast. And it's interesting to see that kind of...
Like the different like types of people that reach out.
Right. Like we just
so different.
I just sent Marcus this lady that got a hold of us, and she's a medium.
Yeah, she's a medium.
Yeah, she wants to come on the podcast.
Psychic.
Yeah.
She's a psychic. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
She does like tarot cards and stuff too, and she wants to come on the podcast.
Like readings and stuff?
Yeah.
Man, I always remember like going to the fair and seeing them do like the thing and like hypnotize people and stuff.
Yeah.
I always wondered if it would work.
I was remember.
I don't know. I want to get hypnotized by this.
I'm afraid to. They're gonna make me do something stupid.
See, like I remember when they're like calling people out in the crowd. I was like, get up and like walk away, and like I'd stand outside because they'd have a tent up too, you know.
I don't want them to call me.
And I'd like stand back, and then as soon as they get like their crowd or like who they want, then I'd like go sit back down. And then even then, like,
we also have an author. I gotta.
Oh, that's right.
We didn't have time. I didn't have time to, but I'm gonna start reading his books, take notes on it, and get him on the podcast. He sent me his book, and he wants to be on. It's like what I can take from it. It's like a Game of Thronesy kind of series, and he has a few books, but he sent me his last one. He wants me to read it and then get him on the podcast. So a bunch of different people coming on, but we're getting to it.
Different kinds of people.
Man, it's hot in here.
Yeah. That wrap it up?
Yeah.
So, also before we go, we have Jamie Lissow coming back on the podcast, and if you guys have any questions relating to whether you're wondering about what's a ghost, what's an alien, things like that, if you have any sort of thing happening,
doesn't matter how outlandish the question is, he'll answer.
Send in your questions, and Jamie Lissow is our correspondent. He's going to do his best to give you the best answer possible. We'll be doing podcasts every week, continuing, and we have a Christmas episode that we're going to be working on. We're still kind of working out the kinks on that, but we'll be back next week, next Friday. I put out these podcasts, actually, this will be out probably in the morning, Friday morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. You can catch us on Facebook around 6, 7 o'clock, on YouTube around 6, 7 o'clock. With that being said, my name is Steve Elenick. This is Marcus, our two guests, Dolores and Dakota. Bahr. You're listening to Fallen Out Radio.
Okay.
My butt hurts.